Hey, thanks for tuning in today. It's Paul Verne, Turning Point Counseling Services. Thanks for watching this channel. My goal on this channel is to provide a platform from survivors of abuse, prostitution, and sexual exploitation, as well as interview experts from around the world that have experience working in this area. I speak to academics and authors and filmmakers and professors. And today I'm very happy to be with Dr. Ingeborg Kraus, Ph.D. She's a clinical psychologist and an expert in psychotraumatology. From 1995 to 2002, Dr. Kraus did humanitarian work in Bosnia and Kosovo, especially working with women victims of sexual violence. She assisted in setting up one of the first shelters for women's victims of domestic violence in Kosovo. Since 2011, she's had her own counseling practice in Karlsruhe, Germany.
Karlsruhe.
Okay, thank you. So you're a fellow therapist. I think you're the first person I've interviewed that's also a counselor, a therapist. In 2013, she founded the Stop Sex Buying Network in Germany, and in 2014, she started the appeal of the German psychotraumatologists against prostitution. And in 2015, Dr. Kraus initiated a petition to abolish prostitution in Germany. She's a member of the German Society for Psychotraumatology, the German Society for Trauma and Dissociation, and the European Society for Traumatic.
Member of a lot of associations.
Yeah, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
I can post a link to that.
At least 10.
So thanks so much, Dr. Kraus, for talking with me today. Let's start with how and why did you get involved investigating the psychological effects of prostitution?
It's a long story. You said in my bio that I was 7 years in Bosnia and in Kosovo during and after the war, and when you are there in a country affected from war and after war crisis, everybody knew, that trafficking was going on. It was visible. What was visible, first of all, where the UN soldiers came to keep peace, or also international organization. But next to the soldiers' base, there were brothels. Those brothels were not there before the war. There were, you heard about this, but when you are living there for so many years, you know what's going on. And those women who were working there, we also knew that they didn't do this voluntarily.
Yes.
So first of all, for the peacekeeping people, men, they were using trafficked women. But this was known, for people who worked there for such a long time. Perhaps not for the journalists who came there for 2 or 3 days, but we all knew this. Then in a land afflicted by a war crisis, you have many women who are in a very high vulnerability.
Sure.
They lost parents. They're very poor. They are, they had to flee. They are alone. These are perfect victims for traffickers. And they're used, this was 25 years ago. They used a very simple method to recruit them. It's the lover boy method. It's today, it's well known.
You
But at
explain
that,
the lover boy method? What's the lover boy method?
these are men, who are looking for very vulnerable women. We knew that they were, driving around with their cars in those, at that time it was prison in Kosovo, and searching for those women. They came with their cabrio, Mercedes cabrio. And one time there was a grandmother. I was the leader of a women's center there. A grandmother came to our center and said, there's something with not all right. And she came from a village outside the big town. There's a man, who is coming to see my little daughter. She's only 17 years old, and so on. And we immediately understood, it's a lover boy. He wants to recruit her, to send her in a brothel abroad. And then we went to see this girl, and we said, you have to be careful. This is a trap. But, a 17 years old young girl, a man, handsome with money, coming to, and she lost her parents during the war, telling her, I'm in love with you, you will have a great future, if you follow me. She wanted to believe in that. Yeah. And this was only one case we knew about, but there were many cases like this happening there. So this was how I first got in touch with trafficking.
Right.
When I came back to Germany, I thought this is like over, it's past. No, those women were put in the German brothels. And at that time, I was active in the Green Party. I'm still a member of the Green Party, and you know that the Green Party put this terrible law in place, 2002. And so I wrote things, and at that time I was a psychologist working just normally in Germany, and I had 3 cases of women. This is how I started in Germany, with 3 individual cases, patients who came to me and who were in prostitution. And I then wrote a paper, a text about those 3 cases I had.
So they were clients of yours in your counseling practice?
Yes.
Wow. And they were in prostitution while they were seeing you still?
One was still in prostitution, 2 were out.
Okay.
And I just wrote a paper, which was then published 5 years later. I had to wait because I'm doing this research for very long now. But it was published 5 years later in a feminist magazine, Emma. And this is how people became aware of it, and this is how I started then a movement. People were then sending me letters, emails, and said, yes, colleagues of mine that said, yes, I do exactly the same, I see exactly the same. I also have clients. And then I said, well, I was the first, let's make a movement out of it. And so 2014, I started a movement of psychotraumatologists, who said, prostitution is not a job. Prostitution makes women sick. And we need to change this law. We are for the Nordic model. This is how this movement started. And now I have over 200 members, in my network.
So that's a great segue to my next question, which is, you hear people say that sex work is work. The term sex worker. And some people, even among feminists, argue that this is empowering. We should legalize prostitution to make it safer. And for those that are watching that don't know, it's fully not legalized in Germany, and they have legal brothels there. Let's talk about that a bit. You know, sex work is work, and what do you think of that?
Well, absolutely nothing, because we went through this, through those lies 20 years ago. This is how, you know, the politicians were trapped in this lie, because the pro-prostitution lobby approached them and said, you know, I'm doing this absolutely voluntarily. And there was a woman who was keeping a brothel, and who also was in prostitution, but she was also profiting of prostitution to others. And she said, well, no, it's sex work. And this is how actually this law came in place, because of those little voices who said it's work. And it's not work. And what I want to say, the German state took over this this language, which is the language of the profiters of sexual exploitation. You know, if a brothel keeper, even if it's a woman, approaches the politicians, then they took over the language of the people who are exploiting sexually the women. And it's not work, because it's making women sick. And this is what we and I and all my 200 and more colleagues are observing every day, you know, that it's not work. It makes women heavily sick, you know. They develop fears, they develop depressions, they develop post-traumatic stress disorders, or even complex trauma. And we are writing about this, you know, exactly. And with this language, sex work is work, it's very dangerous, because you normalize something that makes women sick. Yeah, and it's a trap. So you are actually you don't want women, young women. Yeah, I had a woman. You know, afterwards I got far more clients who were in prostitution. And I had one woman, you know, she was not traumatized before, but she went into prostitution because the state has normalized it. The state says, you know, it's work. So, you know, so she went into prostitution as a student to make a little bit of money. So what happened, you know? Of course, she quit university. She never finished her studies. And she came to me with an alcohol addiction and post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is how you know, the end of the story.
So you've done a lot of studies on the effects of prostitution on women, you and your colleagues. What are some of the main things that you discovered in terms of the impact physically, emotionally, and mentally?
I cannot tell you this in one sentence, because every case is individual. But I have, when I think about now one woman who is out of prostitution for 7 years, and she got in also through a lover boy trafficker. She's now about 40 years old. She's not able to work. She was not able to finish her study. She's scared of just leaving her apartment. She has heavy flashbacks. You know, when she walks, I don't know, in the street, suddenly, you know, she's in the situation, in the brothel she was 10 years ago or something. She has nightmares. She's scary, you know, all the time. So, you know, it's just, and then, of course, I have to fix all of this. Yeah. And I always said, you know, okay, it's not so easy. Yeah. Even if you're a psychotraumatologist, you know, it's not so easy to fix this. The best is not to get traumatized. Don't destroy women. It's very difficult, you know, to overcome it. So, you know, what are the impacts of prostitution? It can destroy lives totally. Yeah.
And how does dissociation and trauma work together? Maybe explain dissociation to people that don't quite know what that is.
So what we always say, you know, we didn't find it out. There were other people who said it already before, but what we always say is that you cannot do prostitution without dissociation. And this is also what the women said to me who were my clients. You have to dissociate immediately, you know, not after the 20 days or something, but with your first client, immediately you are dissociated. Yeah. So what is this dissociation? You know, different kind of things, you know, it's not a complete paralyzation, you know, but you have to switch off those things who would make this a sexual act unbearable. So, like, you are not able to smell anymore. You don't feel so much your body anymore, because it's pain, you know. If you have a sexual intercourse with a stranger, you know, you're not relaxed, you feel pain. So you have to put down the pain in this moment. And also what is important, and this is what I said, because the women in prostitution who were in prostitution told me this. I asked them, you know, how were you able to do it? They said, you have to lie to yourself. This is also a kind of dissociation. You have to tell yourself that it's work. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is also a kind of dissociation, because if you would say to yourself, it's sex, you get raped in that moment. You would not stand it. You would run away or try to push that man away. So you have to lie to yourself and say, it's just work. Yeah. But this lie, one day, you know, you realize that it's not true what you told you all the time. Because your body reacts mentally. You cannot stand it anymore, and everything breaks down. Then, you know, one woman told me she wasn't even able to get out of the bed or to put her clothes again. She was
So depressed.
Yeah, it's nothing is possible anymore. And this is what I'm saying. You know, there are many studies done on women who are still in prostitution to see how high is the PTSD. You know, and those studies, I saw minimum is 50%. That women who are still in prostitution have a PTSD.
A 50%.
A minimum. Yeah, there are different studies done, but the minimum is. I think it's one study I saw 42%, another was over 70, things like this. But those women are still dissociated, you know. So when you're dissociated, you don't have a PTSD. Yeah. So imagine how high would be the rate if you look at the women who are out of prostitution.
Right.
Would be, I don't know, 100%.
And isn't it about twice the rate of war veterans, like people
Yes,
who've
yes,
actually seen active
yes.
combat have a lower trauma rate than women in prostitution?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's 25% for soldiers, and I said, you know, minimum 50%. And this is, as I said, I think it's much higher because when you are in prostitution, you still don't, the PTSD is still not so, has not developed yet so intense. You know how trauma is functioning. Trauma is not breaking out, is not always breaking out immediately. Trauma is breaking out with time interfere. Yeah. It can break out, I don't know, after a couple of months, but it can also break out 10 years after or 20 years after because of the trauma memory.
And if you're self-medicating with alcohol or drugs, you know, to numb your pain, that's going to affect it as well, isn't it?
Well, women told me, you know, if the dissociation didn't work anymore so well, that took then drugs, you know, so that they don't feel the pain anymore, or they don't realize what happened to them. So drugs, alcohol, and all this stuff, yes, is very highly combined with prostitution.
Yeah. What are the conditions actually like in a German brothel? Like, can you describe what a day is like for a woman working there?
Well, you know, we don't get so much information from what is happening in the brothels, because women are not allowed to talk about it. They live in a parallel world, and we in Germany, we think, you know, everything is okay. They have more security and so on, but it's not true, because the women who came to see me, and of course then were not only free after, you know, Woods, I had many women, and they told me something totally different. They told me that it's a parallel world. For example, if you come only 10 minutes too late to the brothel, you have to pay 100 euros. How do you call this?
Fine, penalty?
Fine. Yeah, 100 euros fine.
Fine. So for Canadians,
Sorry.
that's $140 Canadian.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you know, I never had to pay.
I've
I
never
never
been fined for showing up late. Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. So this is not known for the outside. This is something I got, and not only from one woman, from many women, you know, that they have to pay for, and it's a different world, you know. You don't have the working regulations as you have them, you know, outside prostitution, no, because there are criminals who are ruling the brothels. These are, yeah. And I mean, the women are regularly beating up by their pimps. You know, there are no women who have no pimps there. You know, and if a woman is there on her own, she will be pimped very soon. You know? So they get beaten up by their pimps or traffickers because they are exploiting them. And I mean, one woman told me that she regularly came with, how do you call this, blue scars? Bruises, yeah. Bruises into the brothel. The clients saw it, but it didn't care. They didn't care about this. Even she said, and also other women came with bruises. They like it because it shows that they are even more vulnerable. What is it like in a brothel? One woman told me the first time she walked there, as she worked there, or she was there, she had to be totally naked, you know, without anything, you know. So it was not, you know, just in the séparé where she undressed. Women are there all the time, totally naked. So already this is harm, you know. And she said, I felt it like she was shocked. You know. And even before one man touched her, she said, I was derealized immediately because of this nakedness. You know.
Right.
I had to jump in a different person, in a different role, so that I can bear it, you know?
Yeah. Being
totally naked, and there are men, you know, who are watching at you, and, you know. Then how is it in a brothel? You know, I mean, it's also totally financial exploitation, because you have to pay between 120 and 170 euros per day for this room. Imagine, you know, 170 euros. So you have to serve 5 or 6 men before you start earning money.
Before you start earning money?
Yes, to pay the brothel keeper.
Okay, so the first 5 or 6 men that you're being exploited by, you're not even making money off.
Yeah.
So to make money, we're looking at 8, 9, 10 people a day, servicing 10 men a day.
So, but this is no, yeah, this because it's official. Yeah, the brothel keeper said, this is my rate, you pay it, and then you can do whatever you want. But
let me guess, they don't have a union there, do they, where they can go on strike and demand better working conditions?
No.
If it's work, if it really is a job, then why aren't they allowed to form a union and demand better rights?
There is a union, but it has been formed with brothel keepers. You know.
Yeah, so that's not going to represent the
women. No, they will not fight for the rights of the prostituted women, and they have never.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a process against one very famous brothel keeper. Perhaps you heard about him, Jürgen Rudloff. And perhaps you heard about, he had a brothel chain called Paradise. Perhaps you heard about this.
Yeah, I think I read about it on the internet.
And for 5 years, he was tracked by the police, but underground.
Yeah.
And then he was 2019, you know, they managed that women talked about what their experience in his brother. And they said, you know, we were forced to prostitution, we were beaten up, we got tattoos, and, you know, everything what goes under trafficking. And then he was, how do you say, convicted to aid severe trafficking for 5 years. So he had to go to jail.
Oh,
So this, and he was all the time, you know, in Germany in the talk shows. He wanted to share, to show, you know, the public that in his brother nothing or illegal is happening. It's not true. No. Women were forced to prostitution and endured severe harm.
Yeah. What about violence from the sex buyers? What have you heard about that?
Yes. Well, you know, I have only this what the women who came to me in therapy, this information. Nearly every single woman said that they get strangulated. It's part of the job. You know, the first time I heard this, I said, what? You know, strangulation is part, because it's happening so often, all the time. I said,
It comes from porn, right?
why? Yes, because it's because of pornography. Yeah, and they reenact this with the women there. Yeah.
Yes.
What about the harm of the sex buyers? I mean, I watched once here in my hometown, you know, on the website of one brothel, what a woman has to offer, you know, what kind of services. And they have to offer 32 sexual services, one woman, you know. Even this, you know, like deep throat, pissing on the woman, shitting on the woman. I mean,
are you reading the actual site here now of the services?
Yes, I have it here open. I don't. Sometimes I even don't lick my bowls. I mean, ejaculating on your face. I mean, you know, it's really just reading this. It's really disgusting, and I mean, you have 32 or 2 men in one woman, and so on. And I mean, or kissing, you know. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yes, and this is sexual violence. And I came with this list because I thought, you know, it's just a couple of meters where I live. I was invited in the German parliament, and I showed them this list. I said, you know, this is what is happening in the brothel.
How did that go over? What did they say to that when they saw that? Parliament? You went to the German parliament?
Yes, I showed them this list, and I said, is there something you did not understand? Do you think it's sexual service, this list? No, it's sexual violence. No, they didn't react. They were not so much shocked, you know.
Well, some of them probably
And what is interesting, I was also invited, you know, to speak at the French Parliament.
Okay.
And I showed them the same list, and they were shocked, you know.
Well, so the German guys weren't, the parliament weren't.
No, they were not so shocked, not because, you know, I saw the difference, you know, from the French parliamentarians and the Germans.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I saw their reactions. They watched this and they were not so shocked. You know, in France, it was, I could hear it, was like this, you know.
And they don't have legal brothels in France, right?
No, not, no.
No, okay. How long, sorry, Dr. Kraus, how long has it been legal in Germany?
Since 2002.
20 years?
Over 20 years now.
So there's a whole generation basically.
Exactly. You got it.
Normal now.
A whole generation, you know. And I told the German parliamentarians, you are victims of your own law because you are not shocked anymore.
You said that?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, good for you, man. That's awesome.
There is a desensibilization, you know, that happened all over Germany.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Wow. You said, good for you. You said that, eh?
No, because I saw the reaction. There was no reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So, okay, we've talked about the harms. I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you, and you hear this from the pro-sex work lobby, and just a quick comment on the language. You know, I thought it was interesting earlier. You were saying how and this is the first thing you do when you want to create a change in the culture is you co-opt and you take over certain words. So it was brilliant marketing to put the word sex and the word work together. I don't know who came up with that. That was brilliant. But it's like, this is language created by pimps and brothel owners and sex buyers that was then internalized by the women. Because when I first got into this sort of, you know, discussion, it was really odd to me, knowing what I knew about how prostitution destroys women, that a lot of these pro-prostitution lobbyists were women in prostitution. And I've realized now that they've internalized that language. And I've talked to survivors. We were chatting before the interview about, you know, Andrea Hines, who I've interviewed. And in order to do what they do, they have to lie to themselves and say, you know, what you were saying earlier, it's just a job, it makes great money, there could be worse things, etc. And so these are the people that are then, you know, lobbying with this voice, and it's going on in Canada too. Like we basically brought in the Nordic model like in 2015. It's not really being enforced, and now this sex work lobbies still trying to reopen that and challenge that. But it was so weird to me how it was women in prostitution that were advocating for their own abuse and exploitation.
Yes, but here in my hometown, we have many brothels that are kept by women. Yeah. Who are those women? They have been prostituted women, and they didn't manage the exit.
Yeah.
And then they became exploiters. Yeah. And they often say it, you know, I don't want to be exploited anymore, so I changed the side.
Yeah, and is this I'm curious from your perspective as a therapist too. To me, that's a way of dealing with trauma. So when I'm exploited and being prostituted, see how easy it slips in, you know. I just said it, working as a prostitute, like it's like when I was being exploited, I had no power. But if I run the brothel and I don't have to sleep with 10 men a day, that feels like me recreating a situation where I have a sense of power and control. Like that seems to me to be what's going on.
Mm.
Do you
Yes.
think so?
Yes, dealing with the trauma, but they haven't managed to exit the system. Yeah, there are also one survivor who actually created this group of survivors of trafficking. It was strange. It was a couple, a trafficker who exploited one woman for many, many years, but she got sick. She couldn't, do this further.
Mm.
And then this woman was searching for somebody in the internet, to take her turn. So she started, grooming for women who could take over her job. And unfortunately, then she found one young woman, 16, at that stage, 16 years old. And she started grooming her and then put her in the hand of the trafficker. So, she wasn't able to do this work anymore because it makes sick, And then she had to find somebody who takes over.
How many of the women are trafficked, do you think, in prostitution? What percent?
Well, they're nearly all trafficked because we know that something like 95% of the women here in Germany come from abroad. So those women, they're young, they have no job, they have no education, they come alone, they are poor, and so on. So they have high vulnerabilities. So under the definition of trafficking, of the Palermo Protocol that we use in Europe, those vulnerabilities, if you misuse them, it's called trafficking. Yeah. So they're all trafficked. If you understand what is trafficking, it's not like I put you in chain and things like this. But if you have those very high vulnerabilities and somebody is, offering something and you have no other choice, it's trafficking. Yeah.
Well,
So
I think the definition is a third party using coercion, force, fraud to
yes, exactly. Yeah.
profit off the sexual activity of another person. So, because I know talking to Ellie Arrow, Ellie Arrow, she's done a lot of research on
Yes.
yeah. So there's some women that just decide, hey, I'm going to make a little extra money on the weekends and I'm going to go into the brothel. And so they don't have a pimp. But it sounds like from what you're saying, at some point, there's a degree of coercion or force or fraud that comes into play, and they're either recruited by pimps or manipulated in other ways, like fining you for showing up late. So at the end of the day, it really is all trafficking, isn't it?
It's all trafficking. So it's abuse of power, exploitation of special vulnerabilities. This is the definition, also the definition of trafficking. And you have all of this in the German brothels. You don't have the educated women, 40 years old, who is going with her children on the week. You don't have this. You have 18 years old women from, I don't know, Romania, for example, no education, poor, and it's going very fast. It was by chance. I had once one woman in therapy who worked for 30 years as a cook in a brothel.
Oh,
So she was not a prostituted woman, but she was the cook in a brothel. And she told me, you know, she didn't know, she came to me for different things. And she didn't know that I was an activist. But I asked her, you know, how is it today? And she said, because she saw everything, you know. And she said, well, today, you know, the pimps, they come with a bus with those very young women. They have only a plastic bag in their hand. They don't know what is going on. They think, you know, that they will work in a hotel or a restaurant. And then they have to start working. The first day, you know, they're trembling, they're crying. And we, as the staff of this brothel, we are not allowed to console them. And after a week, they don't say anything anymore. This is how it works.
wow.
You know, she didn't lie to me because she didn't know that I was an activist. She came because she lost her husband and she was sad, blah, blah.
Mhm. Wow. So I heard, yeah.
And sorry, if this is not trafficking and this is what is going on in the German brothels, and of course, you know, they are scared, they are alone, yeah.
Yeah, well, and you know, a lot of people, for those that don't understand how trafficking works across borders, when these women are recruited from usually poor countries, they're vulnerable. Maybe they're from a war zone where they have no family, no infrastructure, no support, and no money. And this guy comes to you and says, you know, hey, I can get you a visa, get you a passport, I can get you a job as a, you know, working as a waitress. Where they don't say, I want you to come work in a brothel and have sex with 10 men a day. That's not how they sell it, right? Who's gonna go for that? So there's the fraud, right? So they're deceived. And then when they cross the border and land in Germany, they take away their passport and say, you got to work it off now. You owe me 50,000 euro for your plane ticket and your passport and da 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 da. And they're never going to pay it off. What kind of life is that? And the government there is okay with this. That's mind-boggling, isn't it? That your government is okay with this.
Well, you know, they know all the information by now. I sent another letter 2 months ago to that woman who is involved for this area, and she said, well, you know, we are in the middle of the evaluation. The evaluation will end 2025. Until then, we will not change anything. Yeah, this was the answer, you know.
2 years.
What do you want to do? And I told her, you know, we know everything. There are so many documentary movie now in Germany who are saying the truth, or so many researchers done from journalists. And now, why do you want to wait until 2025? Yeah. I don't know. It's also for me very difficult to understand.
Yeah. Follow the money though. There's money involved. Like I wonder, you know, these brothel owners are maybe millionaires or billionaires, and they're having dinners with these politicians and contributing to their campaign funds. I don't know. This is just me speculating, but usually that's the kind of thing that's going on behind the scenes, right? Follow the money.
One politician said it's not about the money, because, you know, Germany is very rich.
Right.
This sector, what is it doing? Okay, for you it sounds very much, 12 billions of euros every year, but comparison to other sectors, it's not so. It's not. Yes, it's Germany is profiting out of it, no question, but it's not such a big sector. It's not like the car lobby, which is much higher.
Yeah.
Yes, people are asking me, how can you explain it? And I said, we are not only talking about 400,000 women who are exploited now in Germany. When you look, from 2002 until today, 20 years, we are talking about millions of women because they are changing. They want fresh meat, the sex buyers, and so on.
Wow.
We are talking about millions of women who have been sexually exploited in Germany. We have to talk about a war situation against vulnerable women here in Germany. And people are asking me, how can you explain this? Does this government is still tolerating this? I think because, when we had Corona, we did big changes in 24 hours. So we have a government who is able to make changes very quickly. It's patriarchy. People have a wrong point of view of Germany. Germany is still a very tight patriarchy society. Give the men what they want, or the imagination that men need sex, so that they are healthy. This is a very deep patriarchal thought that men need regularly sex to stay healthy.
They're entitled to it. They're entitled.
Yes, and also that they are entitled to it. This is in the mind of the society, of the individuals, also of the women. But it's patriarchal thinking.
Yes. I've heard the argument that legalizing brothels is safer than working on the streets, or it's safer for prostitutes. I don't know if we need to really go into that anymore. I think you've kind of shown how that is not the case.
Yes.
And I got called an idiot on Twitter last week by someone defending brothels because he says, I'm sure he's a sex buyer. He says, well, they have panic buttons in the room. It's very safe. And I said, what job do you go to where you need a panic button? Because if you're hitting the panic button, you're already being hurt. Or you're in great fear of being hurt. It's the exact conditions that exist to develop PTSD.
And you need to reach the panic button also.
And that's to assume you're not being choked, beaten, or held down.
Yeah, you need to have the panic button here in your hand, but the panic button already doing this movement is too far.
And I've never been to a garage or a coffee shop or a school or a business office where they have. Do you have panic buttons in your office, Dr. Kraus? I didn't think so. Neither do I. Right. It's not a job, people. It's not a job. Yeah. I was reading some of your stuff online before this interview, and you talk about the shadow woman, which I've never heard before. But let's talk. I'm really glad you brought this up because, as a therapist, and I work with a lot of people who have compulsive sexual behaviors, watch porn, affairs, massage parlors, strippers, paying for sex. And also deal with their partners. So talk about the shadow women. Who are these shadow women?
Well, the first time it was actually a sex buyer who contacted me because he felt guilty about what he did to his wife, because he was chronically going to the brothels. And when his wife find out she developed, he said something similar as a PTSD. It is called today a heartbreaking syndrome. So she got very, very heavily sick. She couldn't work anymore, and in the end, they're divorced. Yeah. So it was the first time I heard about three cheated women. Yeah, it was from a sex buyer. So I wrote a text. It has been published also at Dignity, and then a woman even out of my network. So psychologist, even a psychotraumatologist, contacted me because I was writing a lot of text. I have this website, and she became part of my network, and she said, we have to talk. Yeah. And I said, yes. And we arranged a meeting, and she said, I'm a shadow woman. For 30 years, my husband cheated me. And I said, what is a shadow woman? These are women who stay in the shadow of the system of prostitution. They have no voice.
Wow.
People talk about sex buyers, people talk about trafficking, people talk about the prostituted women. Nobody talks about us.
Right. The partners and wives of the sex buyers.
And what we endure, when we find out about what happened all those years, it's like, she said, it's like he has stolen my life. I believed him for all those years. I don't know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
And in Germany, there were no points she could go. I was the only one, and she said, I have to talk about it. And it was funny because I wrote simultaneously. It was a phone call, and it was good that I wrote this immediately down what she told me, because the first time you talk about this is always different than the second time. And exactly what she told me, this speech was published also in Dignity, Shadow Woman.
Wow.
This talk,
yeah,
with this woman, and she said, yes, what is it doing to women? It's destroying them. We feel ashamed about what has been done to us. We have no voice, and it is destroying, it's destroying the ability to love, trust. We lose trust. It's destroying the fundamental of a relationship.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, and after I published this, there were so many women calling me,
Wow. We're talking literally like tens of thousands or more.
Yes.
I don't know how many sex buyers are there. What's the population of Germany? 100 million? Or?
About 80 millions. 80
million?
Yes, 80 millions.
So you probably got 1 million sex buyers there, right?
Yes, and I mean, approximately 1 million sex buyers go every day. People think it's over a year. No, it's every day, So 50% are in relationships. So 500,000 women are being cheated every day. And this is not, they are not the same every day. Sex buyers go once a month or once every half a year. So imagine, I said, we must realize that we are a country with cheated women. Nearly every woman is cheated by men.
Wow.
Sorry to tell you this. It's a structural problem. It's not, you told me, yes, you work with men who are sexual aversion, but I think our entire country has a problem. It's not like one has a problem. It's all over.
Yeah, well, you're changing your culture. Your culture has changed.
Yes, our culture changed.
Yeah, and then we haven't even talked about the kids. So let's say those 1,500,000 sex buyers have partners and half of them have kids.
Yeah.
Maybe they have 2 kids. So now we're 250,000 to 500,000 children who are being affected by the conflict and the stress in the home, parents fighting, breaking up, divorce. You know, I'd like to know what the statistics are in the divorce rate since they legalized prostitution. I'd be really curious about that.
That's difficult.
Mm.
But the women also, you know, it's known now as a heartbreaking syndrome, but it's like having PTSD symptoms. Yeah, they have like flashbacks. They cannot watch. They feel trust.
I talk with wives who have PTSD symptoms from their husbands watching porn and lying to them. They've never even paid for sex. But to a lot of women, men watching porn is like cheating emotionally. The emotional impact to them is like they've cheated. And then it's always a hidden thing. This is the other unintended consequence of unlimited access to pornography by literally every person in the world. Is now you have millions upon millions of people that are lying in their relationships and being dishonest, and that's
Exactly.
the worst thing that you can do in a relationship is lie. So
yes, and for so many years, you know, when you find out this man, you know, I built up my life, he lied me all those years. It's difficult.
Can you let's just talk a bit about the Nordic model, and you're advocating for this, and for people that aren't familiar, you know, what the legalities of this are. Like there's decriminalization, full legalization, and the Nordic model. Can you just talk about that briefly?
Yes, so we, as my movement, you know, of experts, we are asking that the German government changes immediately the law into the Nordic model. So, of course, because sex buying should not be allowed. This has to be, you know, implemented. Yeah. We have to change perspective immediately. And we need, you know, to change our view on prostituted women. They have to be decriminalized, because now, you know, if anything is happening, the fault is giving the woman. Yeah. She has to pay fine, or I don't know what, for different things. And exit programs need to be offered, you know. I mean, and of course the re-education of the population, kids, I don't know, in every sector of the society, the police also, and so on. Yeah. So we need to change completely, you know, the system. Yeah. And this is the only way to come out of this.
Yeah, and you're active in advocating for this. Yeah, what are you doing to advocate for this?
Well, I'm writing texts. I'm writing letters to politicians. I have opened this petition. No, I have nearly 40,000 signatures. You know.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for more than 10 years, and it's changing very slowly.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about the appeal for a world without prostitution. What is that?
Well, this is the movement of the psychotraumatologists who want the Nordic model, and who said sex buying should not be allowed, because it's violence against women. It's against women's dignity. Yeah, this is our movement. I called it like this.
Yeah. Do you get discouraged at the lack of movement? You know, when someone writes back and says, you know, we'll get back to you in 2 years on this, like, do you feel discouraged that it's never going to change?
I mean, it will change. You know, I'm always surprised. But you know, we all have to stick on. It will change because there's a lot of pressure also now from the European side on Germany. They get a lot of pressure. I don't know why they're so stubborn. I told you, Germany is a very patriarchal society. And there's pressure from all sides.
Like, other countries are putting pressure on Germany to stop this?
Many, I mean, there's the European Parliament who is pressuring Germany. There's the OSCE who is pressuring Germany. I mean, I put a whole list of European and international organizations who are saying to Germany, hey, you have to change, you have to, and actually saying you have to do something against the demand. And do something against the demand is, you know, to forbid the buying of sex totally.
Yeah. What have you learned about sex buyers? Like, I know that we talked about the entitlement that comes from patriarchy. I think in my experience, most of the people that I've worked with that pay for sex are not what I would call sociopaths. They definitely have entitlement, and they also have they're very ignorant in the sense that all these issues that we're discussing, they seem to not be aware of. I think this is maybe at the beginning, and then they start to sort of cross. I think as they continue to pay for sex and lie to themselves that they're not hurting anybody, they're willfully blind to the harm that it's causing or that the women might be suffering. And then there's a segment of sociopaths and sadists that actually enjoy inflicting pain on other people and enjoy seeing people suffer. But I know that they come from all walks of life: blue collar, white collar, judges, policemen, doctors, dentists, lawyers, construction workers, probably therapists. What have you learned about the men who buy sex? Like, who are these guys?
Well, there were a couple of men who were addressing me because now I'm well known in Germany, and there were sex buyers, and they were addressing me because they understood they had problems, and they didn't want to go to therapists who said, oh, well, you know, just do it. Because there are many, you know, the majority of therapists have also this attitude. So they realized that there is something wrong, you know, and they wanted to talk to somebody who sees it as this is wrong. So I had also a long-term therapy with sex buyers, and I wrote a text, but I just published it in German language about my therapeutical experience with sex buyers. And it's interesting. Actually, it's true what you said, you know, the majority are not psychopaths. Yeah, they exist, but the majority are just normal men.
Yeah.
And first of all, well, those who came to see me, not many, but 5 or 6. They said, of course, they consume pornography, and this is how they got to buy women. And somehow they were stuck in this thinking, you know, they were looking at women. I mean, the way they looked at women changed also. I mean, like normal looking women were not sexually attractive to them anymore. Like a woman like me, like sorry, they had in their mind, you know, they were only attracted to women who were totally sexualized, you know. No normal woman is dressing like this and looking like this. So they were cut off of normal women.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally cut off. And then there were, I mean, where do you find women who look like this? On websites, on brothel sites, in pornography. So they were only consuming this kind of things. This is what they had in common. And
by the way, that's every single person I've ever talked to that's paid for sex is also addicted to pornography without exception. Because it has to, because porn turns women into objects, and you have to objectify a woman to pay for her for sex. You can't see her as a human being. You have to see her as an object. So if you've been training your brain for 20 years to see women as objects to masturbate to, it's not a big jump into, you know, doing that in the real world. So, yeah.
So they were cut off of the normal life, you know, of how women are. They're totally cut off, you know. So what I did in the training is that, you know, that they should, I don't know, read books like from Gail Dines, or look movies, how normal women are, you know, to get into this again. Second thing in therapy I did with all of them is so that realize what they had to cut off, you know, during the sexual act. You know, the question was, what have you split off that would have made you realize that what you did to that woman is violence? And they did their homework and they came with the answers. You know, when they start thinking about
That's a great question. What did they tell you?
I have it listed. I can
Let me hear the answers. What, say that,
yes.
say the question again. What was it that split off?
What have you split off? What would have made you realize that what you did to her was violence? I have listed it. Yes, here. Just a couple of answers. But you know, they worked with me because they realized something was wrong. I booked a woman for 12 hours on New Year's Eve, and after we had sex, she stopped talking to me. She refused to speak to me for the remaining 10 hours. So it was clear, you know, she was traumatized by the thing. Another woman only wanted to have sex in complete darkness. Most women went instantly into the bathroom after sex and remained there for a very long time. When they came back out, they made me leave instantly. One woman said that it was better for men to visit prostituted women than to rape women. When she said this, she almost cried because in that moment she realized how she was experiencing prostitution. One woman said, "No woman wants this." She was a Greek woman, and added that without her money, her family would starve. You know, she said that to him, and he continued.
Wow.
A different sex buyer was a regular client of a woman, and she told him that her father had sexually abused her in childhood because, you know, there was some kind of relationship between them because it was always the same. And I asked him then, well, I think she then needed something else than having sex with a stranger. So what did you do. Yeah. Why did you keep seeing her? Because I paid for it, you know, and so on. So I have many answers, but you know, they realize what is going on, but they're somehow cut it off, or they're themselves dissociated.
Mm.
But they know that it's wrong.
Yes.
And this law, you know, with legalizing sex buying, yeah, is helping this dissociation
Continue.
on the sex buyer side.
Yeah.
And that's why they call me, because they said that there's something wrong. You know, the government is saying to me, it's okay, you have the right to do it, but I experienced something else with the woman.
Right. Yeah.
So the yes, it's this government is also treating the sex buyers.
Well, it's normal. It's giving them an excuse to do it.
Yes, it's giving them an excuse.
You know, well, I think it's great that you're making an effort to speak up on behalf of those who can't, because these women can't speak up for themselves. They don't have a voice, and you can be a voice for them. So, you know, there's a long battle ahead, I think, but don't give up, because you seem very optimistic that eventually change will happen.
Yes, it has to change. Germany is getting so much under pressure now. No, I'm continuing slowly, because I'm the voice of the scientists.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome work. Well, unless there's anything else you want to add, I think I'm out of questions for now. Is there anything else you want to say before we finish up?
No, thank you very much, and greetings to Canada.
Yes, and greetings back to you.